In this DIY, we're going to show you how you can get started on a rainwater harvesting journey. This is a simple, straightforward tank installation, and I've tried to keep it as easy as possible for anybody to do. The first thing that you need to do is actually select where you want to put your tank. Now there's a few key factors. Obviously the aesthetics of a tank is not always ideal, so you don't want them in a perfect little courtyard area here if you don't really want it as a focal point. Also, you've got to consider the water catchment area. So you're going to have a look at your roof. Remember, 1 square meter of roof area with 1 millimeter of rainfall coming down is equivalent to 1 litre of water captured. So you want to select a roof where you've got roughly enough catchment area to start filling your tank. I'm looking at this portion behind me. We've got roughly about 20 square meters of roof here. So 20 square meters at 1 millimeter of rainfall is going to give me 20 litres. Now obviously we're going to get more than 1 mil. 10 litres is going to be 200 litres. My tank that I'm using is a 750, so about 40 millimeters of rain, and that tank is going to be overflowing. Another key point is to try and keep your tank as close as possible to your downpipe. That way you don't have to rework the pipework as much to get that water into your tank. Now I've chosen my final spot is behind me here. I've already put in a concrete slab and I've raised it up just to give that tank a little bit more elevation. So if I want to tap off the water from the bottom of the tank, it just comes out with a little bit more pressure. The first thing we need to do is get our tank into position and start marking out our pipework to get started. I've got my tank into position. I'm now going to run my pipework backwards from the top of the tank through to my pipe. That way I'm less likely to make a mistake with the positioning where I cut the pipe. As you can see, I've also got the condensate pipe from the aircon coming into this pipe. It's up to you whether or not you want to capture that aircon condensate water into your tank. It can contain bacteria, which also can cause disease. I'm going to be using mine in the garden, my rainwater and this condensate water, so I'm not too worried about that going into my tank. Here are the tools and materials that I'm going to be using for this DIY. I've got some elbows. I've obviously worked out the routing that I am going to go from my pipe through into my tank. I've got two 90-degree elbows. I've got some 50 millimeter elbows which I'm going to use for my waste. I've got a socket which I'm going to connect to the top of the tank for the waste. I've also got a ball valve and some fittings which I can connect to the bottom of my tank. That allows me to draw off that water at the base of the tank. I can connect a hose to that or a pump at a later stage. I'll be making use of a holder bat to ensure the pipe is secured to the wall. And obviously we've got the Jojo tank behind me which comes with the lid and the sieve. Now remember, we're going for an entry-level tank, so this is going to be our filtration, which is the sieve inside of the tank. It also comes with an outlet tap as well. I'm going to be making use of a cordless drill with a hammer action function, so I can drill into the wall, a hacksaw, a tape measure, and a hole saw so that I can drill into the top of the lid of my tank. We've also got some PVC glue and some thread tape. Now, as I explained earlier, I'm actually working backwards from the tank all the way back through to my pipe. I'm going to start off by drilling my hole, and I'm going for a slightly larger hole than the fitting just to allow a little bit of clearance, and that allows me to move my lid out the way without moving the pipe out the way. So I can actually get to the underside where the sieve is and clear the debris out on a regular basis. We're just measuring out now the length of downpipe that I need to cut off. I've marked out the position on my pipe where I want to cut into. I'm going to make use of a hacksaw. Now I bought a new piece to run from here. You can make use of the remainder piece of pipe just to save that little bit of extra money. I've cut my pipe, and this is where I'm going to put my 90-degree elbow, running my pipework directly into my tank. I'm going to remove this bottom section of pipe as we don't need that anymore, and I'm also going to put in a holder bat here first just to hold this piece of pipe nice and secure. I've got my downpipe. I'm going to cut it to length, measure out my size. I needed 800 millimeters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that to size, put on my fittings, and I'm just going to do a dry fit so that I can actually hold it up into position, make sure I've got the right length and make sure everything's okay. I'm using PVC glue to join the two fittings together. It's a good idea just to clean out the inside of the mating surfaces, just to make sure there's no oil or any grease there. Now when you're using PVC glue, be quick, because once the parts get joined together, the glue sets very quickly. A quick tip to ensure easy alignment is to make use of marking lines before you apply the glue. Hold that pipe into position for a few seconds whilst that glue sets. There you have it, the main part of the installation is done. I'm now capturing my rainwater. That was simple and easy to do. I started by cutting off into my pipe, redirecting the pipe down into the top of my tank. I'm now collecting my rainwater. Just need to open this up, So I can take my lid off, and then I can get access to my 7 side, which is going to capture all my leaves, and I can discard that on a regular basis. You might want to add some support underneath this side of the pipe just to prevent any sagging. The rainwater tank does come with an outlet tap, which is situated about a quarter of the way up, and we're just going to screw that into position. Ensure you put thread tape in between the mating threads. For the ball valve fitting, I've used the fittings off the shelf. I've got a reducer, I've got a nipple, I've got another reducer, I've got the ball valve, and I've got the garden hose connector fitting, which allows me to connect a standard garden hose onto the bottom of my tank. Ensure you use thread tape between the mating threads to avoid any leaks. There is a blank situated at the bottom, which we're going to replace with the outlet assembly. One of the advantages of putting in the tap system at the bottom now is that if I want to do it at a later stage, I haven't got to worry about losing all that water as I change over from the blank to the tap. When it comes to the overflow of the tank, it's important to direct it somewhere in the garden where it's safe for that water to dissipate and you're not going to get any pooling or any soil erosion. Alternatively, you can redirect it down through where the existing gutter pipe was draining its water. We're going to be using the 50mm socket as well as elbows and a 50mm pipe to redirect our overflow. Keep in mind when measuring out the length of your pipe is to mark at the correct location, not on the underside of the fitting, but on the collar of the fitting, because that's the pipe's actually going to go sliding inside. It's a common mistake which I've made myself plenty of times. So always double check, making sure it's lining up with the top of the collar. So in summary, I've diverted the water from my downpipe directly into the top of my tank where I have that sieve which captures all the leaves and debris. I'll empty that out on a regular basis. From there, my tank starts filling up with the rainwater, and I can tap off and use it as I wish with the watering can, and I can add on a hose at the bottom or maybe a pump at a later stage. You can add in a pre-filter system before the water goes into the tank, which allows you to store cleaner water. If you enjoyed this clip, like it, share it. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have a range of DIY clips which hopefully should suit your requirements.